I'm going to describe the data catalogue that forms part of the catchment management platform and the benefits that it brings to catchment water quality modelling. So the reason we're asked to develop this catalogue was to overcome some of the issues that people find around accessing data and using data in catchment water quality modelling. Currently the situation, there's all sorts of useful data sets out there, but it's very confusing about how to find those data sets and how to access them. And the reason for putting this catalogue together is to help people to find those data sets, understand a bit more about what they mean, and locate the resources that they can find to help them to use them. So there are lots of useful data sets out there. Some of them are public, some of them are available on request, and some of them are very hard to find or not available at all. And some of those data sets are they can be for monitoring, for modelling outputs, model outputs, or they could be for background kind of information from surveys. And we're trying to bring information about those data sets together to make it accessible. So the way to access the Catchment Management Platform's data catalogue from the home page is through this platform menu, and we go to Models, Data and Case Studies, and then we click to get to the data catalogue. Once you're in the data catalogue, you can see the results on the right-hand panel here, listing the data sets that have been identified, and you can see there's 130 data sets in the catalogue. On the left-hand panel, we've got these filters that allow you to cut straight to the data set that you want to by a number of different kind of appropriate tags. So for example, if you're interested in catchment scale monitoring data, we can choose this catchment filter, and it filters into 35 data sets. We can click on this water quality tag here, and it filters in, and we can see that there's data sets, for example, some of the DEFRA test catchment data, monitoring data from the Hampshire Avon, data sets from things like LOCAR and LOIS programs, as well as some model outputs. So just so I can show you an example of one of the data sets, the new data sets that are in there. We can search for example, the separate model. And as you type in, it'll filter the results down for phrases that appear in the search term. And the top data set here is now the source apportionment of annual nutrient and sediment loads to rivers in England and Wales from the separate framework. So that's one of these new data sets that we've included in the platform. We can click on that link. So this is an example of the data set description in the catalogue. We start with a succinct title, and then an abstract for the data set which describes the summary information about where it's from, the information that's in there, and sometimes a reference for the background reference for the data set. We can, as we scroll down this page, we can see the map to show where the data set applies to, and then beneath that we have some online resources, access to background information about this model or some of the data sets that are used within it. Further down we have the lineage statement, which gives even more detailed information about how the data set was produced. In this case it explains the background information that was used to drive the model. On the right panel we have information such as get the data. We can click a link to download this data set. We also have supporting documentation, and this provides even more background information to help understand how the data set was produced and for example, what the columns in the data set might mean. If we click on supporting documentation, we can view this document which describes the model, describes in detail the sources of the pollution and the model outputs in the data set. So some of the other model data sets that we've brought into this platform for the first time are the SAGES model outputs for England and Wales, the separate framework for England and Wales showing source apportionment, data sets on agriculture and non-agricultural pollution to rivers in Scotland, as well as monitoring data such as the Thailand monitoring data from the James Hutton Institute. So as well as modelled outputs in the catalogue, we've also got data sets that help users of models to identify data sets that can drive those models. For example, if we search for rainfall, we can find information about gridded data from the Met Office, long-term background data, or this gridded daily data set from CEH, rainfall across the United Kingdom. So there's a range of resources in the catalogue which should help people to identify information on rainfall, land cover, as well as monitoring data that can be used for validation of models. For example, if we search for Thames, we can find this newly ingested data set on weekly water quality data from the Thames from 2009 to 2013. Again, the catalogue record has a description of the data set. We have a reference for the long-term access to this data set, and we can download the data set and the supporting documentation, including a map of locations across the Thames where that data was recorded. Another useful aspect of the information that's in there is trying to pull together some hard to find or hard to understand information on background surveys, so whether this is agricultural census data or agricultural practices. If we search for the term survey, we can see there's information on Welsh Farm Practice Survey, the Defra Farm Business Survey, the Pesticides Usage Survey, etc. And each of these records has been written by an expert in this field to summarise the information that's available, point to the information that's available, for example, on gov.uk, so that the user can go and download it and find that information. So in that way it brings together all of the information that's available in different places on the internet about farm practice and these background surveys, and provides it in a kind of easy to understand resource. So overall, the data catalogue in the catchment management platform trying to bring together data sets from background surveys, monitoring data, model inputs and model outputs, and make it as easy to understand as possible. To find out more about what's in there, I'd encourage you to go and have a look yourselves and try it out.